Imagine waking up every day, not knowing if it would be your last. The walls of your cell become both your prison and your home, as you await a fate shrouded in uncertainty. This is the reality for many on death row in Japan, a country where the death penalty is not only legal but carried out with a chilling secrecy that would shock the world. In an age where more and more countries are abolishing capital punishment, Japan stands out as a nation still clinging to this controversial practice. From 2024 onwards, only two major industrialized nations will continue executions: the United States and Japan. While the US has maintained transparency regarding the timing and number of executions, Japan operates behind a curtain of secrecy. Since 2010, only snippets of information have surfaced, revealing a system that is both brutal and perplexing. The life of Tomohiro Kato. Let's delve into the life of Tomohiro Kato, a man currently waiting on death row at Tokut Prison. 14 years ago, Kato committed a heinous act, killing 7 people and injuring 10 others. Now, each day is a grim cycle. He rises at 7 a.m. and sleeps at 9 a.m., confined to a cell that's just 4 tatami mats in size. His possessions are limited to a sink, a chest of drawers, bedding, and a small table, an existence stripped of freedom and comfort. In Japan, the average wait on death row can extend for decades. Unlike in the US, where prisoners are informed of their execution dates, inmates in Japan often face a cruel reality. They wake each day without knowing if it could be their last. This uncertainty is compounded by a disturbing practice. Prisoners are usually informed of their execution only a few hours before it takes place. Authorities argue that this approach helps keep inmates emotionally stable, reducing the likelihood of suicide. However, many critics vehemently argue that this practice is inhumane, a twisted form of psychological torture. The case of Menda Sakai. Consider the case of Menda Sakai, who waited 34 years for his execution. In 1983, he was suddenly released from prison after it was revealed that police had withheld crucial evidence proving his alibi and innocence. Imagine 12,510 days spent living in fear of an impending death sentence, all for a crime he didn't commit. Then there's Iwao Hakamada, a former boxer who was released in 2014 after spending an astonishing 45 years on death row. He was declared innocent when a court reopened his case, making him the longest-serving death row inmate in history. Each of those 6,500 days could have been his last, a haunting reality that few can comprehend. A grim wait for justice. As for Kato, he remains in a system designed to strip away hope. His cell is furnished with objects that have rounded edges, a measure to prevent him from harming himself in moments of despair. On July 26, 2022, the atmosphere around him suddenly became charged with tension, signaling a possible shift in his fate. Of the 193 member countries in the world, a staggering 144 have distanced themselves from the death penalty. Most industrialized nations have abolished it entirely. Yet Japan persists in maintaining its execution practices, a strange anomaly in the modern world. While the death penalty remains legal in the US, it is also highly controversial, with public opinion often divided. In Japan, however, the death penalty enjoys robust support among the populace, with surveys showing that a clear majority backs its continuation. The landscape of capital punishment varies greatly across countries. In the US, the death penalty is still implemented primarily in states where historical ties to slavery exist, creating a troubling link to the country's past of racial segregation. In contrast, Japan is predominantly homogeneous ethnically and views crime through a more economic than social lens. A different path. Historically, the fall of dictators like Hitler, Mussolini, and Franco in Europe led to the abolition of the death penalty in their respective countries. Japan, too, experienced a significant political shift in 1945, yet the death penalty remained firmly in place. While Austria, Great Britain, and France embraced reform under left-wing democratic governments, Japan's political landscape has not seen a similar evolution. In 2009, the moderate leftist Democratic Party rose to power in Japan. Yet the death penalty remained intact, a relic of a bygone era that continues to cast a shadow over the nation. The unsettling reality is that Japan has one of the lowest murder rates in the world, a fact that raises questions about the necessity of such extreme measures. The mechanisms of execution. In 2018, Japan executed 15 inmates, a startling number given the country's low crime rates. This was only slightly fewer than the US, which has a far larger population on death row. 7 of those executed in Japan were members of the Aum Shinrikyo cult, responsible for a notorious attack. Such group executions are not uncommon, furthering the grim narrative surrounding capital punishment in Japan. In the United States, the death penalty is treated as a unique legal procedure, subject to rigorous scrutiny and processes. A 2-part trial system is in place. First to determine guilt or innocence, and then to decide on the penalty if the defendant is found guilty. The jury's verdict must be unanimous in most cases, ensuring that a death sentence is not handed down lightly. In stark contrast, Japan's legal system involves a mix of lay judges and professional judges, where a simple majority can determine guilt and the sentence. This means that if 5 judges believe a defendant deserves the death penalty while 4 believe in their innocence, that single vote can seal a person's fate. The execution process. In Japan, 7 prisons are designated for carrying out death sentences. The Minister of Justice has the power to decide when an execution will take place, a decision often made with little public scrutiny. Once an execution order is signed, it typically takes 5 days to carry out the sentence. Historically, these orders were often signed during politically calm periods when media coverage is minimal. The relatives and lawyers of the condemned are not informed about the execution until after it occurs. Imagine the horror of learning that a loved one has been executed without any prior warning or opportunity for farewell. The final moments. For Kaito, the day of reckoning arrives. He is escorted to a prayer room where a clergyman guides him through his final rituals. He is given a brief moment to write a will and partake in a last meal or smoke a cigarette. Next, he enters a room with a small altar, adorned with a Buddha statue and a crucifix, symbolizing Japan's religious diversity. The prison director formally announces the execution order. The last sight Kaito sees is a blue curtain, a final barrier between him and the next room, the death chamber. In Japan, executions are carried out by hanging, a method that remains grimly traditional. In the center of the execution room, 2 red squares are marked on the floor. The condemned is placed exactly in the middle, directly above a trapdoor. 3 judges enter a separate room, out of view of the condemned. Each has a button in front of them, and when the time comes, they press it simultaneously. 2 buttons do nothing, while one opens the trapdoor below the prisoner. This anonymity is designed to absolve them of guilt, a chilling reflection of the death penalty's dehumanizing nature. Aftermath of execution. The execution is overseen by a handful of officials, including the prison director, a doctor, and representatives of the public prosecutor's office. The doctor waits 5 minutes to confirm death before the family is informed. If the family has no special requests, the body is cremated. In cases of particularly high-profile criminals, the ashes may remain in police custody for longer, a grim reminder of the state's power. Until 2007, the Japanese government did not disclose information about executions, shrouding the process in mystery. In 2010, the public was given a glimpse into Japan's execution chambers when the then Minister of Justice sought to stimulate debate on the issue. As it stands, there are currently 106 people on death row in Japan, with the most recent death sentence handed down due to an arson attack that claimed 36 lives. Tomohiro Kaito's execution marked a chilling moment, a reminder of the darkness that lurks within a system that continues to embrace such an archaic form of punishment. Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more interesting content, and click the bell to get updates on our latest videos.